Chapter 3, Slaughterhouse. It started out like any other ordinary workday, the kind you wouldn't even remember a week later. But after the events of that afternoon, I'm stuck with the memory of it, like someone videotaped the whole thing and filed it in my head for life. I remember every word said, every look and gesture. I even remember the smallest details, like what I ate from the vending machine for lunch, and who was at the time clock in front of me when I punched in, things like that. Sometimes I wish I could put the events of that day out of my mind, but the things said, those I never want to forget. I first saw Norley that morning when he picked me up for work at 6:30. He was perky as usual, even though we drank a lot of beers the night before while watching Monday Night Football at his house. I slid into the front seat, bumping my head. "Good morning, Peepers," he said. He always called me that, ever since grade school. Whenever he came over to play, the first thing he'd see when he popped into my room was two beady eyes peering at him through thick glasses over the top of some very important book I was reading. The name stuck. Even my mother calls me that, unless she's mad. Then it's Ben, or Benjamin if she's really peeved. "Morning. Sleep good?" I asked. "Sure, till Judy kicked me in the shins in the middle of the night." "Why'd she do that?" "She's always giving him a hard time." "I suppose 'cause I was peeing in the hamper. She said she couldn't wake me up any other way." "Again? You did it again?" "Hey," he said, "it's not my fault, you know. I was sound asleep at the time. Besides, she's the one who put the stupid lock on the bedroom door." I couldn't blame her for that. He walked in his sleep a lot, especially if he had too many beers and his banging around the house at night would wake the kids. Finally, she put a lock on the door so everybody could get a good night's sleep. "Look," I said, "why don't you just put the hamper in a different room?" "Nah, I already suggested that, but she figures I'll just go in her underwear drawer or something." "Hey, maybe we should talk about this. It might go back to your childhood or have something to do with your feelings toward Judy." I gave him my best Freudian frown. "Are you kidding? I just have to pee, that's all. With the door locked, I picked the closest thing to the john. Besides, I've got it figured out. I'm going to take the lid off the thing after I get home from work tonight. That should do it." He gave me that funny smirk I always got any time I tried to have an intelligent conversation with him. Then he said, "You think too hard, Peepers." Why do I hang around him? He's not half as intelligent as my friends at the college. I mulled over how he could be my best friend after all these years when we pulled into the parking lot. We headed for the gate, chatting about the game the night before. As we flashed our cards to the guard, Norley noticed I didn't have my lunch box. "Jesus, Peepers, no lunch again?" He gave me a big grin. "Hey, I'm not hungry today, okay? You eat enough for both of us anyway," I said. Smart ass. I'll eat when I'm good and ready. It irked me when he talked about my weak stomach, like I wasn't manly enough to take it around the place. I'd been working at the Slaughterhouse almost 8 weeks, and I still couldn't get over the smell. It wasn't from being around dead animals so much. I was raised on the farm. But the odor from the rendering building where the dog food was made was overpowering. The mash from the cooking vats hung everywhere you went. It was like trying to eat lunch with fresh vomit on the floor next to you. I just couldn't do it. Some guys from the kill area caught up to us as we got to the main building and started to talk with Norley. I was still the outsider, so I just hung back. He mouthed, "See you at lunch," and waved as they went in the main door, and I headed for the maintenance wing. I punched in and went to the locker room to put on my work clothes. We didn't have uniforms, just ordinary clothes from home that had to stay at the plant. For $2 a week, they laundered everything, and the public never saw the blood and gore all over our clothes when we went home. They were touchy about things like that. At the new employee orientation, some woman from personnel gave us a talk on the company's image and explained how important it was to watch what we said to the buying public. She told us we're a meat-packing plant, not a slaughterhouse, and we don't kill cows, sheep, and hogs. We package beef, mutton, and pork. She went on and on for about an hour and was so good at her job that pretty soon even I forgot what really went on in there. I headed to the maintenance bay and ran into my boss. "Morning, Ben. We're just talking about the cattle kill hooks. Mel finished them yesterday. We have to get them on by noon tomorrow for the feds. I'm hoping you can stay late today and get them on," he said. "Sure, I'll skip class tomorrow, no problem," I said. Shit, the kill. I couldn't say no. The place was too good to me. I was one of only a few part-timers around there, and they were always letting me change hours to fit my college schedule. It wasn't as if I had to be in the plant that much. The maintenance guys had the best jobs there. We spent most of our time fixing or custom building parts in the shop, and only had to be in the processing areas long enough to measure and install the stuff. Except if I had to go with any of the old-timers on two-man projects, then we had to hang around and chew the fat, sometimes literally, with their buddies up and down the line. Mel and I loaded some stainless hooks on the cart, but there were too many for one load, so we decided to do half now and come back later for the rest. "I can do the hooks myself if you have something else to do," I said to Mel. I'll give you a hand. Don't have to get the chutes and hog slicings till 10 o'clock, he said. It's going to be a long morning. "Okay, I'm ready," I said. We threw the toolbox on the cart and headed for the plant, with Mel walking about as fast as a lame dog. In fact, he was lame, but he walked slow because all the old-timers did around there. They were union and had a leg up on plant labor. Being card-carrying tradesmen, they were the elite of their little plant society, and they enjoyed the vagabond fix-and-mingle nature of the job. I pushed the cart, wondering where Mel would lead us on the way to the kill. Mel opened the doors and we entered the main plant from the maintenance wing. The world as I knew it ended at that door. It was like entering Dante's Inferno at ground level, and the further I went, the worse it would get. It started with the rumble. It was a vibration that you couldn't hear so much as feel. As we walked along, the periodic echo of clanging machinery and the hissing of hydraulic or pneumatic power tools pierced the rumble. In the building, it was old. Not old like an old schoolhouse or warehouse, but old like a cave. Its 19th century bricks and steel had an odd sort of sliminess that came more from the nature of their business than the dampness of the air. This was where things died, a 100-year-old Auschwitz for animals, where their souls clung to the walls and hung in the air so thick you could feel it. To this day I still dream about the place, and the plant is always underground, halfway to hell. Mel took us by the smoke room where the ham is flavored using smoldering hickory chips. He took out his pocket knife and sliced some meat from a hock hanging on a cure rack. I reluctantly followed the ritual, not wanting to offend him or risk having him cut me a bigger piece than I could stomach. He then headed straight toward our destination, stopping to chat a few times along the way. As he pushed open the door to the kill room, I tensed up. There was no mistaking where we were. Screams of the animals mixed with the groans of the power equipment with such intensity that it took your breath away. From now on, Mel and I would be shouting to communicate. I pushed the cart past clattering machinery into the central runway that accessed the line and afforded a view of the whole room. My stomach muscles tightened as we proceeded deeper into the bowels of the carnage. Mel had brought me to the kill room on my second day on the job, and in a matter-of-fact manner showed me the entire operation. After he finished, he took me up to the maintenance catwalk for a panorama of the room, standing there silently as I watched. It was initiation time, and it was his job to take my innocence away. How can I describe the sight? It was like a car assembly line in reverse. Animals entered whole and were slowly taken apart. They had less than 2 hours to kill, behead, skin, disembowel, and cut the animal in half at the spine before sending the meat to coolers and the rest of the plant for additional dismembering and packaging. If it took more time than that, the meat spoiled, meaning the maggots hatched, and the federal inspectors would send it off to the rendering building for dog food. The animals were big, and the machines that took them apart were even bigger. The groans of the hydraulic rippers and the rasping of the electric saws made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. There are 3 walled chutes entering the room from holding pens outside, one for cattle, one for sheep, and one for hogs. The process for each is the same, except for how they're killed. The cows are jolted up the chutes with electric prods, eyes full of fire, pushing the end cow into a gated steel cage just big enough for it to stand in. A shooter places the muzzle of a pneumatic gun with steel rod in the barrel between its eyes and pulls the trigger, causing a massive concussion. Then he flips open the side gate and 1,500 pounds of spasming animal rolls onto the floor. The shackler gingerly snaps a shackle on its hind leg, dodging its flaying limbs, and trips the conveyor catch. A chain on the shackle hoists the animal online, and from that point the disassembly process begins, driven by company piecework rates, about 120 cows an hour, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, in a carnage that never ends. Sheep aren't gated for the kill. They die without resistance or struggle, not that they're fearless. 10 or 12 at a time are released from the chute into a recessed pen that's also a catch basin with a large drain in the floor, where they cower and cry in the corner as the killer does his job. One by one he leans down over them, grabs them by the scruff of the neck, lifts their head, and slits their throat. When the batch is slit, they stand bleeding to death and then collapse as the drain collects their blood and sends it to the rendering plant. Nothing is lost in a slaughterhouse. Everything not fit for human consumption or the drug and cosmetic companies goes into the dog food, except for the cowhides. When they all lay motionless, the shackler shackles and hoists them up to drain the remaining blood from their bodies before sending them online. The hogs are gated just like the cows, but because they run amok instead of spasming when given a concussion, the gun isn't used. In the gate, their throat is slit and a catch basin collects the blood. They're held in the gate for a short time after the blood stops flowing, then they're discharged and shackled like the cows and the sheep. Hogs die reluctantly. Even bloodless, they can stand up and wildly charge the shackler. More than one shackler had leg stitches from hog bites when I worked there. I suppose I could have stood the room if I were there day after day like the laborers. They had long since gotten used to it. Whenever I came into the room, many of them gave me a sympathetic look, remembering what their innocence was like before they worked here. Even so, I can't imagine how they got used to the sounds. The cows bellowed the loudest, but the shrieking of the hogs carried the farthest. The worst was the bleating of the sheep. Even though you could barely hear them, they sounded exactly like babies crying, and I mean it was so close to the sound that if I didn't know better, I'd swear it was babies. So with all this going on around me, I pushed the cart up the aisle, looking straight ahead at Mel in the lead. Shit, he stopped to talk again. "Morning, asshole," he said to a guy on the hog line. He wasn't being insulting to the man, that was his job, cutting out the lower bowels of the hog, and he was good at it. Mel told me he'd been on the same job for 10 years and never spoiled a single piece of meat from accidentally cutting the intestine or bladder. They gave him an award every year, and he hung them in his den, proud to show them off to guests. As they talked ear to mouth, I motioned to Mel that I'd go on without him. I just wanted to get those hooks installed and get the hell out of there. He nodded, and I pushed the cart up to the beef kill area. I put the cart by the head hook conveyor and told the header what I had to do. He said he would put a head on every other hook so I could change them without slowing down the line, then went back to his job. Waiting for the first open hook, I had nothing to do but stand there and watch, and as much as I disliked what was happening around me, I figured I might as well watch Norley as well as anyone else. He was the beef shackler, and I'd never seen him up close before. As the cage side gate opened and the spasming cow rolled out, Norley gauged its rhythms for a second and then stepped into the scene like a dancer cutting into a dance. He deftly snapped the shackle on the upturned hind leg as he swayed and ducked from the jerking limbs, then stepped back and tripped the conveyor catch in one smooth motion. As the cow was lifted on line, he walked over to the chute and talked to the next cow being jolted into the cage by the prodder. Norley continued talking to the cow and rubbing its crown as the shooter waited and the header did his job. The shackled cow was hoisted up and moved a few feet to a large catch basin to collect its blood for the rendering building. When the cow was in position, the header stepped in and slit its throat, then continued to cut muscle and tissue right to the spine, oblivious to the gallons of blood gushing from its neck and spattering everything in the vicinity. With blood running down his rubber apron and waders, he cut the hide from the head and peeled it back to expose a gleaming white skull. Then he put a special knife into a neck vertebrae, twisted it, and popped the head off. As he hung the head on a hook, leaving an open one for me, Norley and the shooter went to work on the next cow. For the next hour, I removed the old galvanized hooks and replaced them with stainless steel ones as the shooter, Norley, and the header kept an endless supply of heads going past me. Mel checked on my progress and decided that it was a one-man job, so he left. At 9:30, the klaxon went off and the line stopped. It was break time. The machinery ceased its racket, and everyone put down their tools and headed to the closest bench where they kept their lunch boxes. The kill workers had to take their breaks in place. There wasn't enough time to walk to the lunchroom and back in 15 minutes. I was starting for the door to grab a cigarette when Norley motioned me over. I sidestepped the basin and walked over to Norley as he was hosing off his apron. The animal's screams dropped off to random bleats and grunts when the machinery went quiet, so it was possible to talk in a normal tone. "Come on, let's have a break," he said as I gingerly moved toward him on the slippery floor. We sat on a bench next to the basin, and he opened his lunchbox on his lap and dug out a bag of donuts. He offered me one. I shook my head, no thanks. "So it's hook day for maintenance," he said. "There won't be any galvanized left in here by the time you guys get done." He munched on donuts as he watched the cow over the basin slowly quit twitching. "Yeah, why anyone cares if there's a little rust on a head hook's beyond me. I guess I can't complain. If it weren't for all those new federal regulations, I wouldn't be working in this nice place." I tried not to follow his gaze. "Well, it beats pumping gas. Where else you gonna make this kind of money?" he said. He saw that I was pale. "Come on, peepers, you'll get used to it. Look at me, I've been here since high school. Nothing bothers me anymore." 6 years, no way. College money for my last year and I'm out of here. I looked at the cow. "You think he's dead when he drops out of the cage?" I said. "I don't know, probably. If not, he's dead after Header gets done with him." They kept staring at me when I was changing the hooks. "What?" "The heads on the hooks. Their eyes were staring at me, and they kept wagging their tongues." "Don't get spooked, peepers. It's just a reflex," he said. "Ain't you seen chickens on the farm running around with their heads cut off?" "Sure, you're right. It's just a reflex. While I got you here, remind Rolly come up and check my shackles. A couple of them are cracked. I sent in a work order 2 weeks ago, and he hasn't been around." The Claxton blared 2 short bursts. He gulped down the last donut. "See you at lunch," he said. The line started up and the room came alive again. As the animals resumed their screaming, I quickly skirted the basin before Header started on the cow hanging there. After another hour of staring heads, I ran out of hooks and went back to the shop with my empty cart. I lit a cigarette and sat at the work table trying to get my color back when Mel returned from putting up the chutes and hog slicing. We went over our daily work orders and started to shear some sheet metal for new tabletops in the bacon packaging department when Rolly walked by. I reminded him about Norley's work order, and he said he'd get up there later that day. Just as I was starting to feel better, the boss came in and told Mel to quick get over to Mutton Guts. The rubber scrubber was acting up and the line was down. "Come on, Ben, give me a hand," said Mel as he gathered up his tools. "Sure, if I get some samples," I said. I liked that machine. It looked like something a crazy auto mechanic built while high on LSD, and I was even allowed to modify it a few times on my own when Mel wasn't around. He built it from scratch without the help of the college whiz boys over in design, and when I voiced my admiration for the thing, he graciously took me into his confidence on how to keep it running. We were just about there when the building started to shake like an earthquake had hit. I grabbed a pillar and dropped the toolbox as Mel turned and looked at me. "It's just Big Bertha, come on." He turned and kept walking. I might as well be carrying a damn camera around my neck. Why did everything around here take me off guard? I followed Mel to the mutton and put the toolbox down to watch the rubber scrubber. What a contraption, and we made a mint off the thing besides. It made condoms for sheiks and replaced 3 laborers when I went online about a year ago. I watched the freshly cut sheep appendixes go through the rinse, stretch, leak test, and roll cycle as Mel puttered with some adjustments. Every few cycles a condom would pop off gripper fingers in the stretch cycle and go flying across the room. He showed me the problem, and we made a few more adjustments. We watched it chatter away for a few minutes when we were done. Then, satisfied it was okay, we gathered up our tools. "You can have the ones on the floor over there," he said. Well, at least he didn't tell me to take the ones in the reject bin. By the time we got back to the shop, it was nearly lunchtime, so I rinsed off the condoms in the sink and waited for the Claxton. At 11:30 sharp it went off, and I headed for the lunchroom. When I got there, Norley was already at a small table in the corner munching on a ham sandwich. I sat down and lit a cigarette. "You gotta eat, Ben." He hardly ever called me that. No, thanks. Look, you don't have to eat a pig. He waved his sandwich at me. Go get a jelly sandwich or something out of the machine. Ham, I said. It's ham, not pig, remember? He wouldn't take no for an answer, so I went to the machine and came back with an egg salad sandwich and a Hostess cherry pie, and slowly began to eat. Sorry, Norley, I don't think I'll ever get used to it around here. He gave me a long look. Let me tell you something. The kill, it's not so bad. It has to be done, you know. No, I don't know. It doesn't seem right. Right? I'll tell you what's right. What goes around comes around. We all get eaten. Plants eat minerals. Animals eat plants. We eat animals. Everybody eats us. It's just one big goddamn supper table. He took another bite out of his sandwich. Sure, Linda can chew on me anytime, I said. Hey, smartass. Look, all I'm trying to say is that people eat cows, okay? I don't know if cows like the idea or not, but if they weren't raised for food, they wouldn't even exist, so what's the big deal? Sure, and if I wasn't eaten, I wouldn't be here either, I suppose, I said. Probably. Hey, the only use you are to most people is to give them somebody to push around and make them feel better. What's eating you all the time, anyway? You're always stewing about stuff in your books. Those guys who write them take a real bite out of you. Yeah, maybe, but it's this place that's getting to me right now. See? What's so different about this place eating your heart out, eating all our hearts out working here, and me eating this ham sandwich? Nothing, except maybe we're a little kinder for killing that cow quick while things eat us up slow, making us squirm till the day we die. Speaking of that, I said, what were you saying to those cows just before Shooter nailed them? Well, they've been prodded and jolted all their lives, so I just whisper some sweet nothings in their ear before they go, try to make them feel better. I tell them what a good, tasty steak they're going to make, stuff like that. Besides, all that adrenaline flowing when they're so scared makes the meat tough. Really? I sat there thinking about what he had said, staring at my cherry pie. The claxton sounded twice, and like Pavlov's dogs, everyone got up and left. I watched him leave the lunchroom, and it dawned on me what an unusual conversation we had. Usually we talked about football, cars, or women. He hadn't been this philosophical since 2 years ago, when we sat in the emergency room at the hospital after his daughter got hit by a car on her bike. I went to the shop and loaded up the rest of the hooks on the cart. The boss came by again. Typical day at the zoo, Ben. Willard called from rendering prep. They cracked a bracket on the chute support for Bertha when they dumped a steer in this morning. Go on up and take some measurements for a heavier brace before you finish the hooks. I'll get second shift to make up the parts and put 'em on tonight. He turned and left before I had a chance to ask what size angle iron he wanted to use. I went back to the plant and took the freight elevator to 3rd floor, trying to keep the egg salad sandwich down. When I got to Bertha, Willard was standing there looking at the chute and wondering if the cow hanging over it would collapse the bracing when they lowered it down. I eyed the monstrous machine from a distance before walking over to Willard. It was some piece of engineering. Bertha was like an old-fashioned meat grinder you used in the kitchen, only 1,000 times bigger. Its job was to take dead animals from the holding pens and grind them into little pieces about the size of your little finger. Then they conveyored the chunks to the rendering building for dog food processing. Bertha also got all the diseased and rejected meat from the plant. She ate anything humans couldn't. I looked at the cracked welds and told him the bracing would probably hold, so he lowered the cow into the chute and started the big Westinghouse 300-horse motor and engaged the clutch. Then he released the shackle and the cow slid into the intake throat. Nearly half a ton of bones, muscle, and flesh met the grinder teeth as the big Westinghouse balked, and the 12-inch wide flat belt on the drive shaft started to flap as back pressure on the impeller fought the motor. The whole building rumbled, and I grit my teeth as the roar of the straining machine hit me like a rock concert speaker in the chest. In 30 seconds it was all over. A 1,500-pound cow reduced to thousands of finger-sized bits, ready for the masher. I was right, the bracing held. I took some measurements for heavier bracing and sketched it up. Then I went back to the shop. It was almost 1:30. I pushed the cart full of hooks back up to the kill and picked up where I left off in the morning. I was down to the last few dozen hooks and had a rhythm going. The head staring at me didn't bother me anymore, and my sandwich had hit the point of no return. The clock on the wall showed 3:30, and I was getting anxious to finish up and go home. I watched Norley as I waited for the next empty hook. He had just shackled a cow and tripped the conveyor catch. Even though he had stepped back and was done with this one, he kept a watchful eye on its jerking limbs. Just as the cow was hoisted fully from the floor, the shackle on its hind leg broke open with a crack, and the huge animal came crashing to the floor. Its head hit the ground and its back end swung around toward Norley. He jumped back quick as a cat, but a wild rear hoof caught him on the side of the head, and he went flying head over heels into the catch basin. The shooter jumped from his perch and went to reshackle the spasming cow as I leapt into the basin, while the header just stood there with a gleaming skull in his hands. My feet hit the slimy basin floor, and I fell flat on my ass. I scrambled over to Norley on all fours, blood all over everything like mud wrestlers in a pit. "Peepers, peepers," he said. "What? What is it?" "Peepers, don't let Jimmy get me." Jimmy was the header. "Jesus, Norley, quit kidding around. Are you all right?" He started to laugh, but coughed instead. "Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I feel kind of funny." I cradled him in my arms. Blood was running from his nose and ear, and my hand was getting soaked where I held his head. "Just lay still. You'll be okay. We'll get an ambulance." I was panicking. He didn't look right. The shooter managed to shackle the spasming cow and hoist it part way up to keep it from sliding into the basin, while Jimmy dropped his head and ran to the emergency alarm switch and yanked it. He was just about to pull the all-stop and shut the line down when the kill lead came over and shook his head. No sense stopping the process. Let the line run and keep people away from the accident. I rocked him slowly as his labored breathing began to ease. "No, I can't." "What?" "But I got Judy. I got the kids." I didn't know who he was talking to. His eyes were glazy. Yeah, sure. Okay, I understand. Okay. "Norley, come on back. Come on, hang in there. Hang in there." I could hardly talk. My chest was tight as a drum. His eyes focused on me. "Tell Judy I love her, okay?" "Sure, Norley, I'll tell her." Jesus Christ, this wasn't happening. Come on, you'll be okay. You can tell her yourself." He slumped and gave a long sigh. He didn't breathe back in. I looked at him. He was gone. The noise quit. The animal screams quit. The whole world went away except for me and Norley in that pit. I held him tight while blood oozed from between my fingers and ran onto the floor, mingling with cow blood running down the drain. The shooter and Jimmy and the next cow in the cage stared silently at us. "Get me a towel. Somebody get me a towel," I sobbed. I don't remember much about the next few days after Norley died. The funeral was a blur. I do remember stumbling on the steps of the church as we carried his casket to the hearse, and I remember talking to Judy after the internment at the cemetery. There was a smell of hyacinth in the air there. I remember because I could have sworn I smelled it in the ambulance when they took Norley to the hospital. After I walked out of the slaughterhouse that day, I never went back. They called the house a few days later, but I wouldn't talk to them. I had my mother tell them I quit. When my last work check came in the mail, I ripped it up and threw it away. It seemed like blood money, and I couldn't bear the thought of spending it. A few months after the accident, a bunch of us from psych class were in the lounge talking. They had left me alone about the whole thing because they knew I didn't want to talk about it. But somebody started to talk to me about the psychology of death, and one guy said to me, "Jungian studies seem to indicate that the death experience promotes the individuation process in people if it occurs after shadow integration. Has your experience helped you in any way?" Well, I quit eating meat and I gave my dog away, if that says anything. Suddenly it struck me. As far as the rest of it goes, even if I painted a big mural about how it feels, rolled it in a ball and shoved it up your stuffy ass, I don't think you'll ever know how it feels. So why don't you wait till your best friend dies in your arms and then come tell me about your goddamn individuation process? I walked out, Norley laughing in my head, and I went home. Now I finally understood why he was always my best friend. He was the best part of me, the part I'd been burying under a mound of books my whole life. I went to classes for a few weeks after that, but the guys must not have liked my answer. They sidestepped me from then on. I never went back for semester finals, and I gave all my books to the library, even my Bollingen series on Jung. I figured it was time to quit thinking so hard about life, like Norley said, and start living it. I got a job at the local hardware store and I married Linda. We've got 2 kids and life is good. I don't regret my decision about college one bit. It's been almost 10 years now and I manage the place and I make a decent living. But what's best about working here is the ordinary people I meet day to day who just want to fix a leaky pipe or put a shelf up in the garage. No heavy stuff, just plain, uncomplicated living. In the end, what I miss the most is Norley's simple homespun comments on life. He was right. We're all just food. Sometimes I'm a nice juicy T-bone for something out there that likes to see me depressed or mulling about life, and sometimes I'm just a dog biscuit for some low-life guy who gets his kicks from making me mad. Who cares anyway? Whether I know the meaning of life or not, I've still got to pay the bills and get out of bed every morning to earn a living. Philosophy doesn't help me do any of that. If you ask me, I couldn't recall one thing from all those books I read over the years on how to live life, but Norley's words from that day are with me every waking minute, and I try to live by them just as he did. So I'm glad I can't forget. I do my best not to eat on other people, and for the most part don't let other people eat on me. Like he said, there's enough people prodding us up the chute without my help. I'm still working on whispering sweet nothings in people's ears. That's the hard part.